All right, we're starting a new topic in this one. And we're going to talk about the organelles. Organelles. So if you look at your objectives for the course, you can see that we've got a whole new list of tasks. And we've got to describe the anatomy of a cell and the function of its components. So basically, this is what anatomy pretty much is. A lot of it, it's a name and a job, a name and a job, a name and a job. And if you're good at that, you're going to be great at anatomy if you can just remember those things. You know, anatomy itself is really not hard besides the memorization. Okay, and then the designers of the course, they like to use these beautiful descriptive words, describe the function. So basically, it's like be able to say what it does. Okay, that's pretty much what it is. Okay, and then you get to discuss the structure and function of the mitochondria and energy production. Okay, and so that's education speak for saying know what the mitochondria does, pretty much. Okay, so we're going to start off by saying what is an organelle. Okay, and I've already talked about what an organelle is, and they are literally organelles. Is just a little organ. Okay, it's part of the cell that does a job. So like in humans, in us, we have the gastrointestinal tract, right? And the job of the gastrointestinal tract is to break down food to the point that it can be absorbed and used by the body. That's the job of the gastrointestinal tract. I mean, so organelles are the same way. Okay, so you have like mitochondria, and it's the site of ATP production and aerobic respiration. So that's what we're doing. So when you go through here, it's just know the basics, know the basic stuff. I'm not going to like go into like depth like you would get in an actual biology course for all this stuff, except when we talk about DNA replication and respiration itself. Right? So, organelles, little organs. Organelles can either be membranous or non-membranous. So there are two varieties. Or non-membranous. Okay. So membranous just means they are covered. That was weird. They are covered with a plasma membrane. Okay. Another way to think about it, and the more anatomy and physiology based way to think about it, is they are separate. They're separated from the cytosol. Okay. They are isolated. They are in the cytoplasm, but they are wrapped around a plasma membrane, so they are actually separate from the cytosol themselves. Okay. Now, we're going to start talking about our non-membranous first. Okay. And the non-membranous is pretty much the cytoskeleton, ribosomes, and proteasomes. Okay. And cilia, they're actually a cytoplasmic projection, but they put it in there. You know, people classify it there as well. Okay, so we're going to first start talking about our non-membranous, and I'm just going to call it non. And we're going to start talking about the cytoskeleton, not skeleton, cytoskeleton. Okay, so the cytoskeleton. So what the cytoskeleton is just basically the skeleton of us, just like our skeleton. All right. So where our skeleton is to give strength and structure to our body. I mean, if you really get down to the nitty gritty of it, the reason we look the way we do functionally is because of our skeleton. The same thing with a cell. The reason the cell has a shape is because of the cytoskeleton. And so what is the cytoskeleton? It's just proteins. They're structural proteins. Okay. And they give cells strength, and they give cells their shape. Okay, and they also adhere cells to each other. Okay, a lot of the cells when they're next to each other, they actually have cytoskeleton between them that they're able to adhere to each other that way. Okay, so there are three main types. Okay, so the first one, these are called the microfilaments. Okay, so the microfilaments, and the microfilament main jobs are to anchor the cytoskeleton to integral proteins of the plasma membrane. Okay. So to diagram this out, so if you have a cell over here, that's a terrible circle, but cells aren't perfect circles, so I guess it's okay. So you have a cell, right? And remember, inside of this cell, you have these proteins that span the membrane. Okay? Some of them are transport proteins, some of them are receptors, but they go. And so what you have on these is you have these smaller, and I'm going to draw the microfilaments in red. Microfilaments, they go between each one of these integral proteins. Okay, between them. And they also anchor down into the cell themselves. Okay. Okay, so that's the anchoring portion of themselves. And they attach to other things. They attach to the other things, other cytoskeletal elements in the cell itself. Okay, and an interesting thing about microfilaments is what has been discovered is they determine the consistency of the cytosol. Okay, so if you have a thin, watery cytosol, that means you have a fewer amount of microfilaments inside of it. If you have a very thick, viscous cytosol, it is a very full area of cytosol is very full of microfilaments. And one thing I don't want you to think is the cytoplasm in a cell isn't consistent. It isn't just a consistent fluidity. There are some parts that will be really watery, and then there are some parts that will be really gooey and sticky and thick. So the distribution of the microfilaments is what causes that thing. Okay, so now we have, after that, we have these things that are called intermediate filaments. Okay, and the function of these is durability. Okay, durability themselves. Okay, they maintain the shape of the cell. Okay, they anchor the organelles. Okay, and they are the reason, and they anchor the cell position. In the connective tissue. Okay, so the microfilaments are the smallest, or the thinnest. That's what I would say, smallest / thinnest. Okay, intermediate filaments are bigger than microfilaments. So if we see here, so what we're going to do is we're going to do in green, we're going to do our intermediate filament. So intermediate filaments, they come in here and they attach to these microfilaments all through the cell, and they're just giving the cell its shape. Okay, so basically that's what our microfilaments do. Microfilaments do. And occasionally you'll have like, I'm going to draw, let's do a different color. Let's do a purple. And let's say we have a nucleus. Let's say we have a nucleus right here. Okay. And some microfilaments will go in and they'll attach to this nucleus. Oh, that's a different color. Don't want blue. And of course, I would delete my nucleus. So let's say I have a nucleus right here. And the microfilaments, what they will do is they will anchor to, the intermediate filaments, they will anchor to the nucleus and they'll hold it in place if need be. Okay, so that's an intermediate filament. And then we have the one that's actually, I think, the most important. We have the microtubule. Okay, so the microtubule. Okay, the job of the microtubule is to strengthen the cell. Okay, and is to anchor organelles. Okay, the microtubules are responsible for changing cell shape. Okay, all right. They move vesicles in a cell. Okay. And what they will do is they form this structure called the spindle. Apparatus. Okay. So what you do is you have this thing called the spindle. Let me draw it in a different color. I'll make it. No, I can't make it orange because that's weird. Let's make it dark blue. So you have this thing called a spindle right here. And from that spindle, you have these microtubules that come out from the spindle. And this is the root. These are the largest of the cytoskeletal elements. Cytoskeletal elements themselves. Okay, and usually there are two of them. Usually there are two spindle apparatuses, and they just send out microtubule projections, one side or the other. Okay, and when these, and the thing about this really neat thing about microtubules is they can change their length. Microtubules can get longer, and they can also get shorter. So that's how we change the shape. So if I want this cell to move, the microtubules, what it'll do is it'll grow long in one direction and shorter in the other direction. And so the cell will move according to the length of the microtubule. If I want to move like an organelle, or if I want to move like the vesicle inside of a cell, what the microtubule will do is it'll shorten the microtubule to pull the vesicle, and it'll lengthen the microtubule to push the vesicle. And you can get around things like that. Okay, so those are the three. I think it's most important that you just understand that there are three cytoskeletal fibers. The smallest being the microfilaments, the largest being the microtubules, and the middle guy is the intermediate filaments. I think the microtubule is by far the most important because it allows the cell to change its shape. It's what actually moves the organelles, and it's going to be responsible for cell division. Okay, so the microtubules are going to split the chromosomes apart in cell division themselves. Okay, the other thing I think is the most important to remember about microfilaments is they are what actually hold the cytoplasm. Sorry, they hold the plasma membrane to the cell itself. So I think that would be the most important thing to remember from that. Okay, so cytoskeleton, done. So we don't really need to spend much time anything else on that one. So I'm going to cut this short here, and then I will talk about next about ribosomes.